Today's word of the day is anthropomorphize on Film Threat Reviews. I'm Melanie. I was Zorianna Kit, and help us support independent film and hit that like button below. Today we review Lucy the Human Chimp, which is on HBO Max. In the 1960s, chimpanzee Lucy was raised to be human as an experiment. When it's decided that she should return to the home country of her parents, a young student accompanies her for 6 years. Directed by Parkinson, stars Janus Carter and her employers, the Timberlands, and a whole bunch of actors who basically reenact most of the film. And that's the interesting thing about this movie. There's footage of Lucy, but it's done through like Mutual of Omaha, The Tonight Show, basically various public appearances. So they had to use reenactors to kind of fill in the gaps of this story. What did you think of Lucy the Human Chimp?
Oh gosh, I mean, I loved this. I loved this documentary. It broke my heart. The 60s and 70s, it was so common. It would never happen today. But I don't know what made the arrogance, human arrogance or hubris of thinking that they could snatch a baby chimp from its mother and then raise it as a human. I mean, it's just, we've seen this happen over and over, and it always ends tragically. And of course, at some point, it's not a cute little thing anymore. And of course, then they don't want it. And no one in the 60s and 70s considered the psychological effects that it would have on the actual chimp, despite the fact that the people doing it were psychologists themselves. So that part is so infuriating to me. There was one person who was so selfless in how she saw the situation. You can say the story's about Lucy, which it is, but at the same time, the story is very much about the human being that did a selfless act to help Lucy try to rehabilitate and be a wild animal, and turned a 3-week rehabilitation trip into a lifetime of just, still being there at the age of 70 to this day.
Yeah, the person you're talking about is Janus Carter, and to the credit to the researchers who had Lucy, it was actually their idea that she didn't deserve to have the life that she had in this cage on their property, and so they were the ones who initiated the return to Gambia at this point, and then they asked Janus to accompany her. And so, having said all that, this is a very interesting documentary because it's not your typical, hey, we're going to show footage and have talking heads. This is essentially Janus Carter telling her story, specifically the time in which she was on that island trying to reinculcate Lucy into her natural habitat, and that relationship they built. And she was a human experiment. Lucy knew sign language. She knew 120 words. That relationship they had and how that relationship translated into her natural habitat, and told it with these reenactments. And so I'm curious to you, what did you think of at least the reenactment parts of the film?
I loved it. Like we've seen these type of reenactments before. What comes to mind most is the documentary Man on a Wire. They did a lot of reenactments, which added to the thrill of that particular story. I thought that these reenactments were really complimentary to the vast amount of footage and photographs that already existed. Because the way it was done, first of all, the actress, I wrote her name down because I really liked her, Lorna Nickson Brown. She played Janis as a 21, 22-year-old student who was basically supposed to just like clean Lucy's cage on the property and feed her, but not interact with her, and later becomes her
That friend.
That friend, yeah, I guess that's for lack of a better word. And then they had someone by the name of Peter Elliott in a chimp suit that played the chimp in those reenactment scenes. The way it's shot, it's kind of the chimp is always a little bit blurred or out of focus, so it's never
very blurred and very out of focus. Yeah,
so you never actually have to look at the chimp and go, "Well, that's not real." I loved that. It did not take me out of the documentary. I felt it only enhanced the documentary. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, considering that there was no footage taken, it was basically Janus alone with several chimps on this island. And so I'm pretty sure she didn't have access to a film camera at all. And so, I think that's what they had to do. And most of the film is her talking, is her narrating her story, or this story. And so I think it worked, because it's a very fascinating story. And I brought up the word at the beginning, anthropomorphize. I understand the high intelligence of chimps, but at the same time, I'm always skeptical about people who assign too much human emotion and thought. And the way she talks about Lucy, it's as if she knew Lucy's exact thoughts and feelings at the time. And that bothered me a little bit, but not so much, because I think the story is as authentic and genuine as it possibly can be.
That didn't bother me at all, because I mean, I have a dog, and I feel like I could understand what my dog wants and needs, and I can say my dog's being a diva today, or my dog's really cranky today, or my dog's not listening to, like, I feel like that didn't bother me at all, because of course she knew Lucy. I mean, that it became a lifetime commitment with this chimp. So the rehabilitation process was horrible. It did not work, because Lucy didn't want to eat leaves and berries. And there is this scene on the island, it was reenacted, where Janis is getting so frustrated, and she's like, Lucy, food, eat. Like, she's yelling at this chimp to just please, like, years into this rehabilitation, Lucy will not eat. She wants Janis's human food. And it really kind of reminded me, if you've ever watched any of those Helen Keller movies with like Patty Dew, there was this moment of frustration where like the teacher just cannot take it anymore. And that scene is here, but it is reenacted. It is quite incredible what the two of them went through because of what humans did.
My feeling about the film is that there's a level of expectation management here. This is, as much as this is a story about Lucy the human chimp, it is much more a story about Janis Carter.
Yeah.
And the things that I found interesting was there was a point where, because Janis was kind of in charge of this refuge, this wildlife refuge, she was the alpha of the group. And the day came when her alpha status was being challenged, which is to me fascinating. And then you also brought up the fact that she was literally on this island by herself for extended periods of time. So it was her and a bunch of chimps.
7 years.
Yeah. I mean, she had minimal contact through letters, and a couple people tried to come on the island, but the chimps wouldn't allow them. They didn't want to, they didn't want people invading their territory, which was another interesting. I would say definitely the film was not what I expected going in.
Yes.
But it turned into something fascinating, and I think Janis is a good storyteller, and and I have no reason. Everything's from her perspective, and I believe I don't have a reason to doubt any of the things she saw, said, or felt. Well, I can see you're very passionate about the subject. I've known you be passionate about animals and animal rights, and you were way into this documentary. So so the question is, did you give it a 9? And I'm not sure you did, so I'm gonna say 8.5.
No, I gave it a 9. I gave it
okay.
Yes, I did. Just because it's a great story, and it's done in a way that is that does have cinematic moments thanks to some of the reenactments. And it just also goes to show how far we've come as a society in terms of what we tolerate and what we don't, although we still have a lot more work to do in that area, because we still have primates in laboratories that we do horrific things to, and that has to end. I think you enjoyed it as well. Obviously, you're not so over the moon like I am. I don't think the reenactments maybe worked for you as much as they did for me. But I do think you gave this movie an 8.
I gave it 7.5. You know, I appreciated the movie. I thought it was a good story. I liked, you know, I was definitely engaged. I don't know that I want to see more films shot this way, more documentaries shot in this fashion. But it, you know, I understand this whole idea of, well, we just don't have film. You know, we just never filmed it, so this is the best thing we can do, and I'm okay with that.
But you do the way you've said it. I feel like you're saying that there's just not enough footage, and that's why there's reenactments. I disagree, because there's so much footage. There's just not a lot of footage on the island.
And that's, you know, I'm not criticizing it for it. I'm saying that this is a good alternative to not having it.
Yes.
And I think it was handled well. When, you know, they first tell you about what's going to happen, that a lot of this is reenacted, and that was an eye-rolling moment for me, going, oh my God, no. And the way they pulled it off was good. I had no problem with it, and I think if they had tried to do it better, it would just come off as inauthentic and ingenuine. Think like the movie Percy versus Goliath. I think our discrepancy in score has to do with our passion about the subject matter, and I think it's clear which one of us is more passionate about it than the other. With that, Lucy the Human Chimp is on HBO Max, and the documentaries. HBO does great documentaries, and this is clearly one of them. So with that, let's get out of here.